The Sarasota Library System was named the best in Florida a couple of years ago, and that honor goes primarily to Sarabeth, I think. She would say it's because of her great dedicated staff, but she has been able to motivate that staff because she's such a wonderful leader, such a motivational leader, an inspiring leader. She loves the library, she loves this community.
She sees it as, how do we take the library to people? How do we think innovatively about how we support our community? How do we reach out to those who have the least amount of access, who have the least resources, but never at the expense of anyone else. It's really, it's a community-based institution. It's not really a library, it's a nexus for our community where many things come together.
SarabethKalagian was born Sarabeth Bryan on July 13, 1959 in St. Francisville, Illinois. She was the youngest of two children. Her brother Sam, 4 years older, born to Samuel and Betty Lou Bryan.
I think you had described them as salt of the earth. Until I went to college, I didn't ever realize that people maybe didn't get along with their parents or maybe didn't admire their parents the way I did.
St. Francisville was a small town of 1,000 located on the banks of the Wabash River. Her father ran a local family-owned lumber yard and cabinet shop and taught Sarabeth the basics of life.
I spent an enormous amount of time with my dad. I loved going from grade school. I would walk a couple of blocks to the lumber yard and the cabinet shop where he worked and spend the afternoon. He always let me try things. So he would show me, but then he would just stand back and let me try. So at a very young age, I was hammering nails and using a bandsaw. He taught me, of course, how to change the oil in my car. Didn't ever want me to be stranded on the road without the wherewithal to take care of myself.
Her mother was very engaged in serving the community. She taught Sunday school and was a founding member of the town's women's club.
One of my favorite stories about her is that she knew that a house that was being torn down had logs underneath the siding, and she talked the folks who were tearing it down into saving the logs. And from those logs, the Women's Club built a log cabin. And that's where they did fundraisers and had all kinds of events. And if you think about the small town, that really became kind of the heart of the small town, that log cabin that everyone remembered, but it was probably going to be abandoned.
Sarabeth attended St. Francisville Elementary School. She would become a good student, but her academic career got off to a slow start when she attended kindergarten.
I didn't like kindergarten. I walked home, and I did that evidently for the better part of the first couple of weeks of school. They would come and ask my brother, "Where's Sarabeth?" He would say, "I dropped her off at the kindergarten classroom door." And I think the explanation for that, my parents told me, was that I just said there were too many people and they were all bigger than me.
The kindergarten teacher soon made Sarabeth feel at home, and she decided she would stay in school.
I still remember the songs that she played on the record player while we were taking our nap, and the blocks that we built with, and all of the fun that she instilled into that classroom.
While her brother Sam was 4 years older, the two developed a lifelong bond, and he would include her in his activities.
Very protective and very open to doing things with me. I grew up in a neighborhood where there were almost all boys, and you can imagine it could have been easy for them to think, oh, here comes this kid who doesn't quite fit. But my brother always made sure I was included. That relationship has really never changed.
Her parents provided her with a loving home, and the family would frequently enjoy everything the area had to offer, dressing up for events like the St. Francisville Sesquicentennial and enjoying the natural resources of the area.
My dad would get off work. My mother would have the picnic basket all packed, and we would go to a state park and fish and have a grill out, usually with several other families. In the summertime, we just had free reign. We lived on the Wabash, so we oftentimes explored across the Trestle Bridge. We swam in the Wabash River. We loved to fish. And all of those adventures were the most simple of pleasures, but for kids, we filled our days with a lot of happiness.
Like many children her age, Sarabeth studied piano. When it came time for her first recital, she added a twist that provided the audience with an unusual memory.
I was so nervous that the moment I took that step forward, I started hiccuping. And I hiccuped throughout the whole recital, my performance. Some folks said afterwards that I hiccuped in time to the music, so there was wild applause. I think people were just kind.
As a girl, Sarabeth worked several jobs, but none more rewarding than her very first business selling night crawlers to fishermen along the banks of the Wabash River.
I really liked insects and bugs. My whole life, I've been a student of the behavior of insects and crawlies. So when I was a kid, I was usually digging in the backyard, and I can still see the coffee can. I would fill it with night crawlers, go down to the river, and convince the fishermen there that they were the very best, the perfect bait. And I guess I made a pretty good go of it because I made enough money to buy a bicycle.
As a student, Sarabeth enjoyed most all classes except math, but especially liked writing and reading, winning a reading award in 5th grade.
I was a voracious reader. I think that came because my parents read to me. In fact, my father, I have a set of books, adventures and mysteries and poetry and legends that he read to me. I read everything I could. I would go to the library, and there were certain sections I was supposed to stay in, but the kind librarian let me roam up and down the stacks and take anything that I wanted to read.
She attended St. Francisville High School, where she was the editor of the school newspaper, performed in the drama club, was a member of the homecoming court, was in 4-H, sang in the choir, and accompanied the choir playing the piano.
The wonderful thing about going to a high school where my class was a class of 32, so the entire high school was a little over 100 students. You could be in anything. You could participate in anything. So if you wanted to be part of the chorus, there was no audition. You were part of the chorus. If you wanted to be in a play, you were given a part.
While the high school had no formal girls' athletic teams, Sarabeth exercised her athletic skills as a cheerleader.
And in Southern Illinois, the enthusiasm for basketball is very similar to what you would find, and I'm very familiar with the movie Hoosiers. So the whole town would drive down those back roads lined with corn stalks to the ball game. And the excitement was incredible. So being a cheerleader, I was a cheerleader from a very young age, and that was one of the ways that I participated in sports at a time when we didn't have a girls' basketball team.
Her aunt and uncle managed a county children's camp for disadvantaged kids in Lake George, New York, in the Adirondack Mountains. In the summers, during her teen years and through college, Sarabeth would work at the camp as a counselor.
The children that would arrive at the camp literally came usually with the clothing that they were wearing, and from fairly impoverished backgrounds. And my aunt and uncle said that their entire goal was to fill the 3.5 weeks that those kids were at camp with as much fun and good nutritious food and activities as they could possibly cram into the time. I was the lifeguard and the swim instructor, and most of the kids had not ever had a swimming lesson. So the fact that at the end of their time at the camp, they had not only gained a lot of weight and were really, really filled with joy, they all knew how to swim.
Sarabeth graduated from high school in 1977 and received a scholarship to the University of Illinois, where she would major in journalism.
My father went to University of Illinois, so I think from the time I grew up, I couldn't imagine that I would ever go anywhere else to college.
Going from a small town school of 100 students to a major university was a cultural change for Sarabeth.
It was like a wonderland to me. So many topics, so many subjects, so many opportunities, and I really enjoyed every minute of it.
In her junior year, she entered the College of Communication, where she could develop her writing skills into becoming what she hoped would be a serious journalist in television.
I think a big part of it actually was out of the classroom. I worked for the student-operated television station and radio station and began reporting everything that was going on campus. In my junior year, I also started covering the local Champaign and Urbana City Council meetings, which gave me a little taste of the politics of local towns, and that has certainly been an interest of mine.
While she had her academic scholarship, she needed to earn money to help defray her living expenses. She worked a variety of jobs, including the local Greek restaurant Zorba's, where she rose through the ranks.
It was the place to be seen and lots of activity. I was first a waitress, and then I started helping as a prep cook, and then I graduated to be a cheese flamer, which was the highest ranking job I think you could have at Zorba's.
She graduated from the University of Illinois in 1980 with a BS in Communications and went to work at WCAI in Champaign, Illinois as a reporter, camera operator, producer, and sometimes anchor.
It was an interesting time. It was Woodward and Bernstein. On the other hand, on air, it was the time of personalities. So I'll never forget how difficult it was for me. I was a hard-hitting news reporter, and I wanted to be taken very seriously. And I loved the writing, the story, much more so than being on camera. But the number of takes the first time I had to be on camera was very lengthy because they insisted that I give the tagline, which was "Good night and may the good news be yours." And I will tell you, I had a hard time delivering that with a straight face.
In 1981, the station was bought out, and the new owners wanted change. Sarabeth found herself looking for a new direction.
I took the opportunity to go to the University of Evansville, where they had a wonderful student radio and television station. During the time I was there, I was the single paid employee of those two stations and worked with students, and it was by far one of the most challenging but most rewarding jobs I've ever had.
While at the University of Indiana, Evansville, Sarabeth again worked several jobs to enhance her income, including a bartender, newspaper delivery girl, and horse groom exercise rider.
I moved into the country, and my neighbors had horses, and they never had enough people to exercise them and really look after them. And I was so, from the time I was a kid, filled with joy about being around horses. Put me on a horse and I was in heaven. So it seemed like a great thing to do.
Faculty members at the college were permitted to take classes for no tuition. Sarabeth jumped at the opportunity.
I just started taking a class here and a class there, and pretty soon someone came and said, you know, this is starting to shape up into a master's program, and would you like to guide it in a particular direction? So I did. I got a master's degree in school media services, which then I also added on to get a library science degree.
She graduated in 1982 with a master in library sciences and school media services. She accepted a contract position with the Du Bois County School District in 1983 as coordinator for school media services. They were renovating and building new schools throughout the county.
They had decided that they wanted their school media centers to be the heart of their school, and I had just graduated from library school, and they thought, I think she knows something about this. So I stayed through all of that construction, had the pleasure of contributing to purchasing the books and the computers, hiring the staff, doing the startup, and then kind of letting it go and letting the other folks take over.
Her father had spent part of his youth in Sebring, Florida, and would take the family to visit regularly. Sarabeth knew she would end up in Florida and had visited Sarasota. In 1985, a position opened at the University of South Florida in Tampa for an adjunct professor for library and information science program. Sarabeth applied and received the position.
It was part-time, so it was not going to be the career to stick with, but I really loved the teaching. So it was at the campus at Tampa, and I taught news writing, and I also taught some of the library science classes.
While Sarabeth was teaching in Tampa, she lived in Sarasota. It was her hope to one day find a permanent position here. One fateful day, while having her car serviced, she learned such an opportunity may be available.
The person sitting next to me waiting asked me where I was from, and we struck up a conversation. She said, "Well, you're a librarian?" I said, "Yes." And she said, "There's a library job open at the Venice Library, and I think you should look into that." I did.
Sarabeth was hired as the Youth Services Librarian for the Venice Public Library, where she remained until 1997. While there, she helped develop multiple programs for children and teens.
That was a time when there was a huge emphasis on making sure kids knew how to read and grew up enjoying it. So I was given all kinds of latitude to just create programs that would inspire and excite kids. That was probably the most gratifying. We brought kids on trolleys to the library from neighborhoods where they hadn't been attending library programs. We worked with local businesses and arts organizations. The circus, when it was in town, occasionally brought over animals and acrobats to entertain. But at the heart of all of it was really, how can we inspire kids to read and love it just for the rest of their life?
While working with the Venice Library, Sarabeth also worked at a local bookstore in the Sarasota Square Mall. In 1987, Venice City Councilman John Kalagian and Fran Bourne were planning an event to celebrate the 200th anniversary of the U.S. Constitution. They were planning several activities to include the area youth, and Fran thought the Venice Library would be a good fit.
John had noticed me at the bookstore at the mall. So he then became aware that I also worked at the Venice Library, and he said to Fran, there were some coloring books and activity books and all kinds of things they wanted to plan. He says, "I'll go talk to Sarabeth."
That began a courtship that would lead to John proposing to Sarabeth.
When he asked me to marry him, I couldn't imagine any better person to experience the joys of life than with John.
They were married at Selby Gardens on April 23, 1989.
It was a glorious day and such fun to have all of our friends and our family in that beautiful setting. There were some interesting moments, sprinkler heads that exploded and raccoons that were very interested in the cheese and fruit arrangement. But all in all, both John and I thought it was an absolutely perfect day.
Sarabeth and John spent the next 17 years enjoying life together. John was a balance for a work-driven Sarabeth.
John always knew when it was time to take a break and take a trip down to the Keys, or go see a play, or pack up a picnic and go out to Siesta Key and go to the beach. So we were very compatible, and he was the person who just every single day of my life I knew I was the center of his universe.
That universe would go dark on December 27, 2006, when John succumbed to cancer. which he had been fighting for some time. Sarabeth turned to her work for solace. At this time, she was the library manager at the Fruitville Library, a position she had held since 2002. However, she was soon to be offered a new opportunity.
That was the library director. At the time, we had 8 libraries, and I moved from being the manager at the Fruitville Library to be the interim library director. I called myself the bench warmer because I had absolutely no intention of changing jobs. But I also knew that our library system might benefit from someone who'd worked in it for a little while. We were coming into some tough economic times in 2007, and so I made the jump.
In 2007, Sarabeth became director of the Sarasota County Libraries, and in 2014, she became director of Sarasota County Libraries and Historical Resources. During her tenure, she has been a major influence in multiple phases of development, from strategic planning initiatives, the Selby renovation, opening and building new libraries at Spanish Point, Gulfgate, Northport, and Venice.
She has done many things, been supportive of many of our parenting programs, including our Nurturing Dads class, has helped us get families more engaged with the library system. We work with very young children, birth through 5, so when we're able to expose preschoolers to the library experience, sort of naturally their parents become involved with the library system. They've brought us great programming. They provide a lot of programming during the summer for our families, and we've collaborated on many projects over the years.
Sarabeth was energetic and full of passion for children, and particularly children's literacy. I think having a book in a child's hand is just the best thing that she could ever do, and she just thrives on that.
We have a very vibrant library system that is accessible to all of our citizens. Not every community can say that. The programming in our libraries is very creative. I think one of the things that she has done is not only been able to develop programs that are good for the community, but she's an excellent manager working with her staff and their volunteers to motivate them to do more than they would do on their own. And it's a great skill that she brings to that particular position.
She's disarming with her kindness, but behind that, she's a problem solver. And, you know, I guess the other thing I would say about Sarabeth is she does not say, I can't. She always answers with, well, let's think about that, and I can help you out with that. She's a doer.
She also has partnered with private entities, nonprofit entities, and getting people into the library, whether it be for a program, to find a book, to use an audio book, or a movie. She just thinks that that is the ultimate.
One of the most significant things that she's done is to help develop a library foundation where the community is really pulling together at the highest level to support the needs of the citizens through a foundation that can help them be bigger than they would be by themselves.
With the advancement of technology and the manner in which we gather information, libraries throughout the country face continuing challenges. Still, Sarabeth believes there will always be a place and service for the physical library to provide.
Well, it's true that hardly a day goes by that the demise of the public library isn't discussed at some length. But what we know is that we continue to do many of the things that people have always relied on us to do. But there are all of these new initiatives, and most of those are about learning.
I think Sarabeth has been able to show that while some people may think libraries don't matter anymore, she's been able to demonstrate to the communities that they matter more than ever. That yes, people still check out books, but they come to deal with the life transactions at the library that maybe they can't do at home because they don't have a computer. They'll check out language software, they'll learn how to use their iPad with some of the classes that go on, they'll enroll their kids in literacy programs. So I think she's made the library a real center of community engagement in this community.
One of the things that is at the heart of libraries, and always will be, is helping parents make sure that their kids begin that learning curve, that reading curve, helping parents become their child's first teacher. And so we have invested an incredible amount with lots and lots of partners in early literacy. And so that's been exciting to watch and see that evolve. Right now we're featuring some new areas of the library called creation stations. These are places where the library has invested in some equipment and some resources that perhaps an individual couldn't afford. 3D printers and laser cutters and crafting tools. And it's incredible to see the people who are coming to those programs. And the age range is from, 5 or 6 years old all the way through 80s.
In her personal life, she continues to keep John close to her heart through her relationship with John's children, Matthew and Jill.
How fortunate I was that my husband had 2 wonderful kids and that they were very welcoming, and we've had great relationships. Jill and Matthew are in very different ways reflective of John, and I'm always delighted to see that aspect of his personality coming out in them.
We asked SarabethKalagian her advice for those who follow.
For folks who are thinking, how do I get up every day and go to work and make that meaningful, I would just say appreciate your colleagues, rely on your coworkers, and also be one of those people that they can rely on. For the personal side, I can say without any hesitation that living in the moment with the people you care about most is the lesson that I've learned. And I would encourage anyone to pause and take the time today to make sure that the people that you love know how much you care about them.